When you Google Pixel 6 review, you are going to see tons of positive reviews of the phone. And after watching almost all of them, I requested one of my friends who lives in the US to order one for me and then send it here in Nepal via DHL. So she ordered it from Best Buy. But maybe because of the global chipset crisis or Google's lack of experience in the hardware distribution business, since it's primarily a software company, my friend only got the Pixel 6 after 3 weeks of placing the order. And if you go to Reddit or Twitter, you will see lots and lots of buyers complain about not receiving their unit of the Pixel 6 or the Pixel 6 Pro yet. As you can tell, it's definitely not an easy phone to get your hands on. On top of this, Google has launched this phone in a handful of regions only. Keeping this in mind, I really don't understand how Google wants to position itself in the smartphone industry. If I remember correctly, even last year's Pixel 5 was launched in some countries only, and they are yet to bring the Pixel 6 series to one of the biggest smartphone markets like India. Also, how they are going to distribute their products globally in the coming future is a big question mark. The aspect where companies like Apple, Samsung, and other Chinese brands are extremely good at. Therefore, I genuinely feel Google could, or rather should, do better with its distribution network. I mean, they've got all the resources to become a big player in the smartphone industry. And this phone, the Pixel 6, has convinced me of the same even more. It costs around $650 in the US after taxes, which converts to roughly 50,000 rupees in India. So with proper distribution channels and launch offers, if Pixel phones are launched at an aggressive price, I can see it becoming a massive hit globally. Anyway, shortly after reviewing the iPhone 13 and the Realme GT Neo 2, I started using the Pixel 6 as my main phone, and overall it just feels like an entirely different phone. That's not to say that it's a perfect phone, at least it's not perfect enough for me, but the crucial thing here is that the Pixel 6 is the most balanced semi-flagship phone that you can get right now. I think that matters a lot for many out there who cannot afford a flagship phone but want a reliable device with a near premium experience. And this is where the Pixel 6 wins big time. First off, let me talk about its design. Is it great? Well, not quite. It has a pretty generic glossy glass back design with metal frames that you come to expect from a phone in this price range in 2021. Thankfully, it does have IP68 dust and water resistance. But on my usage, I found it to be slightly heavy despite its form factor and a relatively smaller 4600 mAh battery. Regardless, it has an even weight distribution complemented by slight curves on the back, which means holding the Pixel 6 is not all bad and you will eventually get used to its weight. Still, it would have been better if Google had gone with a matte back like the frames alongside more tactile buttons with superior feedback. Maybe. This one feels a bit shallow to my taste. And the position of these buttons catches me off guard way too often since I constantly mistake the volume rockers for the power button instead. And even its haptic feedback does not compare against the likes of Samsung's flagship devices. At the back, this wide camera module is certainly unique, but I have seen some people dislike it as well. It's totally a personal preference, I know. And I am perfectly fine with it since it's certainly a breath of fresh air compared to most Chinese phones of 2021. On the front, however, Google should have provided slimmer bezels all around since this one gives me more of a mid-range vibe instead. I could have given it a pass if it had subtle curves on the side. And if the leaked renders of the Pixel 6a are anything to go by, it looks like Google has acknowledged this issue on the comparatively inexpensive Pixel phone that's launching pretty soon. For the $650 price tag, I also find the display quality of the Pixel 6 to be just about average. Don't get me wrong, it's a fine screen with sufficient brightness and good colors, but if you look at the competition, much cheaper Android phones offer better displays these days. And given how affordable OLED screens have become over the years, I think Google should have definitely offered a smoother 120Hz refresh rate and a faster 360Hz dots response rate here. While I understand 90Hz is completely fine for most users, if you're coming from a 120Hz display, the Pixel 6 will definitely feel a bit outdated and hopelessly average. And with Pixel phones, quality control issues are common news. You know what? I think the person in charge of Pixel's quality assurance department is Creed Bratton. Every time a new Pixel phone hits the market, so do a ton of issues. And this time, some Pixel 6 users have complained about strange screen flickers, greenish tint, second punch hole, and whatnot. Luckily, my unit has not faced any of those troubles till now. Okay, moving on, this OLED display also embeds a fingerprint sensor underneath. It's an optical sensor, which means it isn't always on like an ultrasonic sensor that I've come to love about Samsung's flagship phones. But the bigger issue here is that it is not as fast as the one on the OnePlus 9 or other Chinese smartphones. Google says the delay is because of how the sensor utilizes enhanced security algorithms, but with mass public outcry, Google addressed the finicky fingerprint reading issue in the latest December security update. It does feel a bit faster than before, although not by much. Okay, now getting to the speaker quality, it's a solid B+. Pixel 6 does not sound better than the iPhone 13 Pro Max or the Galaxy S21 Ultra, but it is still good enough for casually listening to music and watching videos. Likewise, performance is one area where the Pixel 6 does not disappoint. Powered by the proprietary Tensor SoC, thanks to the partnership between Google and Samsung, this first-gen mobile chip looks quite promising. In terms of synthetic benchmarks, it is on par with the likes of last-gen Snapdragon and Exynos chipsets. By last-gen, I mean the Snapdragon 888 and the Exynos 2100, of course. And on my real-world usage as well, everything is as smooth and fast as you would expect. During the initial boot, the phone did get slightly warm, but the problem was resolved after I received an OTA update in November. Okay, memory management also leaves no room for complaint, and there have been no micro stutters or stability issues under my normal day-to-day tasks either. Gaming, on the other hand, certainly could have been better. This is supposed to be a flagship chipset that should technically be competing against the big boys. Yet, I noticed the Tensor chip struggling with demanding games like Genshin Impact at the highest of settings. With graphics set to highest and turning on the 60 FPS mode, the gameplay is not that good, and I notice frequent stutters and lags. Even dialing down the settings to high does not improve the stability as much, since I frequently notice some slight jitters every now and then. As a result, I had to bring the FPS down to 30 for relatively better performance. As for PUBG Mobile, the Pixel 6 is not able to hit Ultra HD graphics and extreme frame rates either, which is something the iPhone 13 and other Snapdragon 888 powered phones pull off rather easily. Regardless, under HDR graphics and ultra frame rates, I was able to achieve a stable 40 FPS where the gameplay was quite smooth. For 60 FPS gaming, you can set it to smooth graphics and extreme frame rates that will yield 100% stability. Likewise, 90 FPS optimized games like Mech Arena and Critical Ops can hit 90 FPS mark here. On top of this, I did not face any heating issues on this phone either, which is great. It does get a little warm, yes, but not to the extent of Snapdragon 888 powered phones. But at the end of the day, for gaming, the Pixel 6 is simply not on par with the competition, and I really hope that Google catches up with the competition in the next iteration of the Tensor chip. Yet, Pixel phones go beyond benchmark results or high-end gaming. For me, the pure Android 12 experience has been an absolute joy to use. At this point, it's fair to assume that you are well familiar with most Android 12 features, so I won't be wasting your time by discussing them here. But what I will talk about are some incredibly cool Pixel 6 exclusive features. Unfortunately, some of them don't work as intended or are straight up unavailable here in Nepal. For instance, the Pixel 6 can fend off robocalls or send car crash alerts to your emergency contacts if you are in the US and a few other regions. Similarly, live translation also does not work in this part of the world. Nevertheless, out of all the features that I can access, I find improved voice typing to be the most useful. Google has baked the language model into the Tensor chip, so dictation is more accurate and much faster here. And it works without any internet connection too. For the most part, it works almost flawlessly. You can say next paragraph to change the paragraph, you can clear text, undo edits, add emojis, all with your voice. Apart from this, live caption with translation is up and running here too. Google says that this feature works without internet. However, even after downloading the required language models, it did not work without an internet connection in my case. Sadly, unlike voice typing, live caption with translation is not quite as fast. And cross-checking the live translation with the video's closed caption, I noticed that Google's captioning is off by a certain degree. Okay, let's talk about the cameras now. And what I can definitely tell you straight up is that the Pixel 6 is easily the best camera phone for its price. For this review, I compared its cameras against my iPhone 13 Pro Max, which costs almost twice as much as the Pixel 6, and the Pixel 6 holds up its own. Talking more in detail, I found that Google's imaging algorithm tends to boost exposure by a bit to deliver overall brighter images in most cases. As a result, its photos don't look as punchy as those from the iPhone. Then again, it all boils down to personal preference. Detail and sharpness levels look similar on both phones though. It's the same with ultra-wide images as well, but iPhone's ultra-wide shots are much wider. Moving on, portraits from the Pixel 6 retain a more natural color tone, whereas at times subjects even tend to look smoothed from the iPhone. Here, the Pixel 6 series introduces something called Real Tone, which longs to accurately highlight the nuances of diverse skin tones. This is a really big deal for people with darker skin complexions because traditional smartphone cameras have always misrepresented the skin tones of people of color. We can see this in action from the selfie camera as well. Take this photo for example. iPhone's color processing has turned the subject's skin tone pinkish, whereas the Pixel 6 delivers a much more natural shot. Aside from the skin tone itself, other elements of the image look truer to life, like the black jacket and such. Then there are all the helpful features to enhance the camera experience even more. Want to quickly remove some elements from the photo? Well, Magic Eraser's got your back. Sure, it's not perfect, but
60% of the time, it works every time.
Okay, when it comes to smartphone videography, we know that iPhones are the gold standard. But I must say that the Pixel 6 holds its ground pretty firmly. At practically every resolution, I find its videos to be brighter, whereas the iPhone gets a bit overboard with contrast. On the other hand, stabilization is similar between these phones, even at 4K 60 FPS. Still, under low light conditions, the iPhone shoots better videos with better exposure and a hint of warm tint. In terms of the ultra-wide-angle videos, as you can see, the Pixel 6 has a narrower field of view. But I still prefer it over iPhone's contrast-heavy result. However, I am pretty annoyed with how the Pixel 6 is capped to just 1080p 30fps videos from the front camera. Here as well, the Pixel manages to deliver better exposure and a relatively consistent skin tone compared to the iPhone. Anyway, finally, I am not too thrilled about the battery endurance of this thing. In all fairness, Google promises 24-hour battery life here, and I got similar results during my usage. But coming from the iPhone 13 Pro Max, this just does not compare. Plus, I noticed that the Pixel 6 cannot provide a decent standby endurance as well. Yet, since Google's machine learning models run more effectively on the device itself, thanks to the low-powered AI Context Hub, the battery life should get better in the long run. Pair this with the adaptive battery tech that will learn usage patterns to effectively prioritize power delivery to apps, the Pixel 6 should, in theory, provide better battery endurance over time. I will let you know more about it in my long-term review. Still in all, there is no hope for faster charging speeds here since the Pixel 6 can accept a maximum of 23 watt of power only, even when using Google's recommended 30 watt power adapter that you've got to buy separately. With this, it takes more than 2 hours to juice up the battery. So by now, you might have already guessed that the Pixel 6 is easily on the best phone of the year shortlist. So it's definitely a product I would recommend to anyone looking for a sub-flagship phone. But looking at the bigger picture, Google occupies less than 1% smartphone market share globally. And as much I wish you would buy a Pixel phone for yourself, its limited availability is a harsh reality. Unlike phones from other mainstream brands like Samsung, Xiaomi, and OnePlus, you cannot simply buy a Pixel 6 unless you're in the US, Australia, or a handful of European countries. Yes, Google has shown they can make terrific phones with equally good hardware and software this time, especially with the Pixel 6. And the upcoming Pixel 6a is shaping up to be an excellent mid-range phone as well. But where Google wants to see itself in the smartphone business, only time will tell. Personally, I would like to see Google bring a $200 budget phone to India, Nepal, and other developing nations. And I desperately hope to see the Pixel 6a launch here so that it would compete against the likes of the OnePlus Nord series and Poco's mid-range phones. That would be a really healthy competition. So guys, that was all for our in-depth review of the new Pixel 6. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notifications icon. Till then, I am Pratima and I will be back with another review.